Hey artist friends, welcome to the November edition of our Mixed Media Menagerie Challenge, a little collaboration between Laura, Aaron, myself, and a guest artist each month. This month we have Casey as our guest artist, where we're using earth tones, gouache, and toothpaste. So I gessoed my pages and then decided to cut a center fold. Now, we didn't have to do this. It wasn't part of our challenges. However, I have been kind of dividing my journal out so that I'll end it on the last spread. I've been skipping every other spread knowing it was going to get kind of thick. And in order to accomplish that, I needed to use an extra page here. So I decided to do just this little flip in the center, just for my own purposes. And I decided also that I would just cover it. I kind of have a plan here. I'm going to cover it with some pages that I use some gouache on. And if you haven't seen that video yet, I have a little bonus video of how I used my gouache on these pages and also made some marks with a whole bunch of gouache on some book pages. And I'll have that linked below and in the iCard above. And I'll be using those mark making pages in a little bit, and I'll talk about them again as well. So I'm just using some matte medium to adhere these pages to that center flap. I have an idea that I want to use, but honestly, I don't get there in the end. I do something completely different, which is, the norm with art journaling. And before I continue with the rest of my voiceovers, you're probably thinking, hey Nicole, everyone else already posted their Menagerie videos. Where has yours been? Well, if you missed my little announcement on Instagram and here over on the community tab and YouTube, I have been sick for almost 3 weeks. I had no voice, a very sore throat, and it was impossible to do these voiceovers. You might still hear some of the cold in my voice, but I didn't want this to go any longer. I wanted to get this tutorial up for November before it turns to December pretty soon. So after adding those gouache pages to my center flap there, I decided they weren't dark enough. We're supposed to be using earth tones, and these kind of look a little bit too pastel for me, and I haven't sprayed these yet with any sort of fixative because, again, I wasn't sure if my original idea was going to work, and so I wanted to allow myself to continue to work on them if needed, and I'm glad I did because here I am adding just some more layers of gouache. If you aren't familiar with gouache, it's much like watercolor. It's just not as transparent. It can be like maybe a little bit more chalky, but basically works very, very similar to watercolor. Again, be sure to check out my second video of how I made these papers originally and my mark making with gouache because I'll talk a little bit more about my gouache there in that video as well. I'm just continuing to add more layers to this back flap with the gouache, trying to make them a little bit deeper, more earth toned instead of pastel looking. Now I did take these pages outside and spray them now that they're finished and they're dark enough. And my idea here is that I was going to cover these pages with brown paper and cut some shapes out of that brown paper so that you would see the gouache like peeking through. But I tried it, I didn't like it, so I moved on with some other ideas. But here's just showing what I was kind of intending to do so you could kind of see the direction I thought it was heading, and in the end I go in a completely different direction and trash that idea. So now I'm picking up some of those book texts that I did the mark making with gesso with gouache on and adding them to my pages with matte medium. Again, these are also sprayed. Had I not sprayed them, I wouldn't have been able to add that matte medium on top. It would have run just like watercolor does because gouache is a water-soluble material. I think I still have being a little under the weather brain, so excuse me if I fumble on my words or forget what I'm saying. It's been a rough few weeks trying to get over this very bad sore throat cold that I've had. I'm just continuing to play and experiment and place these papers down. I don't really have like a general, or I have a general, I don't have like a concrete idea. I'm feeling kind of really earth tone, grungy, floral. It's kind of the direction I'm going. So I'm trying to get a background here. I'm planning on adding some florals somehow. Now I'm using my gesso to kind of push those mark making pages to the background, and now I'm going to add some of the little ledger pages. These are the same pages that I did the gesso on originally, and they're on the flap, so I'm tying that handwriting from the flap into my pages as well. Now I'm adding some more gesso. It's creating some white space, also pushing those pages to the back and kind of making that spread look a little bit more cohesive. As you can see, the left looks a little bit more put together, where the right looks like a whole bunch of chopped up pages. As I add that gesso, the pages are going to come together. So these two pages with poppies were in my House of Books subscription kit last month, and I wanted to use them somehow on my pages. I was thinking I was going to use all 3 pictures. In the end, I only use 1, but I do use them for inspiration with the flowers that I'm about to sketch. I'm loosely sketching with a Stabilo Al Graphite edition. I don't want these to be perfect. They're supposed to be grungy, sketchy, kind of look like poppies, but you can use your own imagination. Maybe they're a different flower to you. But just doing some really, really loose sketches here with my Stabilo All in the graphite. Now that I'm happy with those shapes and have them kind of drawn in, I'm now adding a little bit of the black Stabilo Owl because it's going to be a little bit darker and add some more contrast. Next, I'm going to pick up my pencil and my paintbrush with some water to activate that Stabilo to add some shadows and shading in those little poppies. As I activate that Stabilo, I'll go back and forth and add a little bit more pencil mark as I need, maybe a little bit more of a graphite touch, just kind of intuition here, how I want these flowers to look in the end. In the bonus video where I do the mark making with gouache, I do add some Stabilo around those circles, and it kind of got lightened up, and I wanted to bring that black from that Stabilo into some other elements, so I just traced a few of those a few of those circles with that black Stabilo and activated it. And wanting to bring, again, a little bit more of that black shadow and shading to the pages, I scribbled some of the Stabilo on that book page to the right, activate it with water, and I'm just using it like a watercolor on my pages to bring that black element throughout. Next, I decided I want to add just a little bit of color to these poppies, and I didn't really want to go with red. Now I'm going to change my mind in a little bit, but first I decided to add a little bit of walnut ink to add some more dimension, kind of give these poppies not such a flat look. It's going to add a little bit more dimension to them, shadows and shading, and kind of give a little bit more interest to them, so they don't look kind of like blobs on my page. Maybe it's just adding a little bit more interest, bringing them out, making them stand a little bit more out from the background. And just like that black Stabilo, I'm adding a little bit of the walnut ink throughout the pages as well. So I still really wanted to add that brown craft paper, but just not in the same way that I thought I originally would. So instead I'm going to add it in smaller elements on my pages. I'm punching some holes in it to still kind of get that textural see-through look, but it's going to not be on that center flap. I'm going to put it in a couple of different places on my pages. I'm trying to make the holes a little bit bigger with a pencil. It didn't really work that great, and I don't do that with all of the pieces of paper, but here's my attempt to make the holes a little bit bigger and grungier. I'm just going to stick that down front and back with some matte medium, kind of squish it up a little bit to add some more texture to it, and then I'm going to top it off with some walnut ink to kind of allow it to blend in with my pages a little bit more and add a little bit more texture to that paper. Here I am doing the same thing with that paper to another little pieces. I like to try to add elements to my pages, usually in groups of 3, sometimes 5, sometimes it doesn't get an odd number, but adding the elements in several parts of the pages kind of move your eye throughout and make them look a little bit more purposeful, like they're not just stuck to the page for no reason. I topped those hole punched pieces of craft paper off with that walnut ink like I mentioned, and then I had another piece of that craft paper. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to incorporate it to the right side. I play with it several times, and now I'm just dripping some more walnut ink onto my pages to add a little bit more grunge and texture to them. In the end, I decided just to use one of those poppy pictures. I'm looking forward to using the other 2 in some pages because they're really fun, but I decided that one was probably all I needed. My journal's pretty small and it would have been too many elements. Now I'm adding some holes to the other craft paper and trying to figure out the layout of, do I want that poppy to be under the flap, on top of the flap? Do I want to leave some of that white space of the poppy? It's like a dance here and figuring out exactly what is going to be best in my journal pages. So I think I've decided I needed to put the poppy on a tag and put it on the flap instead of under the flap, and I'm adding some walnut ink to that tag, and I'm going to let it dry completely before I begin to play with it on the pages. And while I'm waiting for that tag to dry, why not add some more walnut ink to the pages? I'm adding some splatters and splashes to that left, and also going to flip that flap and add them to the right as well. So I had to wait a little bit for all of that walnut ink to dry, and after it dried, I decided I wanted to add that red to the poppy. So I pulled out that gouache, which I happen to have a really pretty red in, and I'm adding just a touch of red to those poppy flowers. Again, it's going to pull them from the background, since I already have so much walnut ink in the background, kind of warm them up, make them look a little bit more like flowers. And now I'm playing with some of those book text pages that I did all that mark making on to figure out how I'm going to layer up this right side. Do I want that book text behind the tag and then the poppy? How am I going to incorporate that craft paper with the holes? Just a lot of playing and back and forth here to figure out the right. Ooh, here I am deciding maybe I want it under the flap. I'm trying to figure out the right layout for my pages here so that it all comes together. And in doing that, I decided I wanted to add a little bit of green to those stems, since I was going to use that green leaf kind of shape mark making page on the right. I'm pulling some green to the left as well. think I've finally made a little bit of a decision here. I pulled out that Collect Beautiful Moments saying from the Tim Holtz chipboard. I love the horizontal element of it. Since the 3 flowers are vertical, I like that strong element tying them all together. It really kind of brings that page together. And now I'm adding my book page, that craft page, and some other elements to the right as I'm deciding and changing my mind with that matte medium. And now that I have that right side figure out, I'm going to officially stick down that Tim Holtz chipboard sheet. It's really thick, so I peeled the back off of it, and I'm using some heavy gel to stick it down. And I wanted to add just a little bit of a darker kind of black element to the right and some words, so I decided to cut one of those sayings in half that I thought fit the page really well, and I'm going to stick it to that top right corner. I wasn't going to stick anything under that flat, but I really wanted to use that mark making sheet of like brown leaves, and I grabbed a little glycine envelope that came in my House of Books subscription, layered it up, and then I decided I needed some more little marks in there, so I'm trying different elements, and I have a lot of like round images here, so I wanted something different. So I grabbed some of these X's that I made, or crosses, and I'm going to spread them throughout the page. I put them here under the flap to add some interest, and then decided to put a few on that left side as well. I really love how these X's or crosses or plus signs, whatever they are, added another element to those pages. Once I added them, it kind of like brought everything together for some reason. I have no idea why, but I think they were what my page was missing. then I found this cute little photo I thought would be perfect under that flap. The colors were perfect, the size was perfect, and it fit really well under there, so added it. And then I needed to add a toothbrush. Our elements were gouache, warm colors, and a toothbrush, and I was waiting to the very end to use my toothbrush because I wanted to use it to make just some really slight splatters with that gesso on top of my pages to kind of be an element to bring it all together and add a little kind of a textural element to the top. Once I get those really light gesso splatters on, I'm going to add some with my paintbrush as well to add just a couple like larger dots with them, so they're not all tiny, but add a few more little gesso elements to tie everything together. Using gesso is one of, I guess I said that right. Gesso is one of my favorite ways to kind of tie things together. If it feels like the elements are kind of separate and not putting together, I'll just pull some little gesso, or also like here's some walnut ink. Oh, did you see that hand? That was my husband. I completely forgot he did that when I was recording. Anyway, back to my video. I'm adding some walnut ink here on the top, and I added that gesso to try to bring everything together in the end. And that is it for this month's Menagerie. I'm adding just some final touches of that walnut ink and drying it as I go. I want to thank you so much for your patience with me and getting this video up. Thanks for your support over on Instagram as I've been away for a few weeks. Make sure if you haven't, check out Laura, Aaron, and our guest artist Casey's video to see how they used gouache, warm colors, and a toothbrush this month. If we've inspired you, make sure you also create. We'd love to see what you create. Use the hashtag mixed media menagerie and MMMNOV22. I'll have a little slide at the end with that as well. And we'd love to see how you are inspired by these 3 prompts. And I think my favorite part is seeing not only what our little team of collaborators create, but then seeing what you create. It's so much fun to see how we all use 3 things and come up with completely different journal pages. Thank you again so much for your support and for watching, especially in this Thanksgiving season of November. I hope I give you a few good laughs with my crazy voiceovers. Thanks for your patience. I look forward to seeing what you create. Again, use these hashtags if you do so we can find you, and I'll see you soon for the December edition. My goodness, hopefully I'll be a little bit more back to normal by then. Thanks again.